it's important because if you have to go out of character, then that means every time you want this dog to respond to you, you have to be someone other than yourself. And I really like the dog to understand, look, this is who I am. I'm going to be calm. I'm going to be that calm, assertive leader that everyone's heard about. And
yes.
This is where your reward comes from, too. And I'll go a little bit higher pitched when I do my praise tone when I'm going to reward them. But for the most part, we function at this level. I'm not going to get into this yelling thing or anything. I mean, I do introduce stress at some point when we're training with a dog, because one of the things you see in the park all the time is the owner that's saying, Max, come, and it's happy, and it looks nice, and everybody watches, and it looks great.
But Max isn't coming.
Right. Well, when Max really runs away and there's really a car coming at Max, that voice changes to panic. And if the dog hasn't been worked under those conditions, you're not going to get a conditioned response under those conditions. And this is one of the things where a lot of people that take their dogs just to a class is not the end. You have to start adding the layers, and training under stress conditions is one of the layers. The dogs have to learn how to respond to you when you're stressed as well. So while I'll start them off with that calm tone and get them to learn all their commands, we then proof the dog under stressful conditions by introducing some level of panic in the tone, some level of panic in the visuals even. And you'll save your dog's life one day by making sure you have all your bases covered in that way.
Interesting that you point that out. My boyfriend at the time, years and years ago in New York, had one of my Bedlington Terriers in Central Park in the sheep meadow where everyone had their dogs loose, and an Afghan started to chase him. And, we were all just, kind of college-age type of people, and he didn't, the boyfriend didn't know anything particularly about dog training things, and the dog was great off-leash, but he panicked, the dog did. And just what you're talking about, Charlie yelling at him, Falstaff, come, in a frightened way, the dog ran into Fifth Avenue and was run over by a cab.
Oof.
So in New York City, of all places, this can happen. Your dog can get even out of your hand on a leash, even if you're not off leash. So to be able to have a dog respond when you sound panicked, but you say, well, your voice is calm like that all the time. You want the dog to listen for you. I imagine that comes partly from having worked with police-type dogs, because no policeman or policewoman is, yelling out commands. It's all very quiet and very subtle and very almost invisible, like working so beautifully with an animal where you're working as one. But what about people who, in their natural life, aren't calm, assertive, quiet people and have a kind of loud, screechy voice and are kind of over the top with everything anyway? Do you have to teach those humans to tone it down?
Oh, yeah. And I like put it blunt to them, like, you are stressing your dog out. I tell them about whatever you're bringing home from work is going right down the leash, and if you're walking around with that tension, the dog picks up on it, and it just causes a cycle of frustration between both.
And the human doesn't understand what's happened. See, that's what's great with working with a trainer who can help people understand their part in the puzzle, because the person thinks there's something terribly wrong with the dog, and quite honestly, the dog probably thinks there's something terribly wrong with the person.
Right.
And you come in and say, yeah, actually, this tango's going the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Do you think that this issue of a puppy young, what kind of personality they have, what kind of a attitude they have to the world around them? Do you think, I have always been told that these puppy evaluation little tricks that people can do if they're going to a nice breeder's home, which is the only place, of course, to buy a dog from a breeder is at their home, where you see the whole litter and the mom and stuff, that some of these tests, like turn the puppy over or hold him down and see how he reacts, that in fact they aren't really indicative of what that puppy will be like at 6 or 12 months, that those early tests are not so valid, yet you're saying you can take that dog into the home improvement center and you're going to have a very good idea of how they're wired. Which is it?
The other component, Tracy, is that it's dog, which there's your one test is test dog. Then you've got owner, which is huge. Then you've got environment. And if we took the same dog that I bought into that home improvement center and tested for my test, and then gave it to a new owner who has no skill set whatsoever in a very stressful, hectic environment, you're going to have a dog that's going to wind up in a shelter. So it really it's the three components: dog plus owner plus environment. And I could take a perfect dog out of a perfect home and put it into a stress environment, a stress owner, and have that that whole scenario change. Or it could take the dog that's being a problem, put him into the calm owner's hands that has some training skill set, hands-on mechanical training skill, in a calm home with some structure, and then have success. So this is a three-component issue.
And one that's not so easily figured out. And then, you wonder, people were all adopting dogs that have been rejected by somebody who, we always say it wasn't the dog's mistake. We always say it's people who didn't get it and either neglected the dog or just interacted inappropriately with the dog. Do you think that can be reversed?
Well, you've got the genetics at play of what that dog is, and then if the dog has weak nerves genetically, then it's hard. You're not going to build new nerves. You're not going to do that. Dogs that are sound frightened, for instance, you're not going to get the dog to completely give up on their reactivity to sound, but you can condition them to react a little different to specific sounds. It's a lot of work, and it's doable, but again, we got to be in a situation with the correct owner in order to do that. And one of the things that I see in the city a lot is people walk around with shake cans, pennies in them, and it just baffles me why you'd want a dog to be fear reactive to a sound, especially in a place like New York City where you have a different sound every 5 feet you walk.
Exactly. And they don't understand you're not meant to be walking around with a can anyway. That was never the
right.
idea of a shake can in the first place. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk to you more about if people are buying puppies, never from a pet store, only from a true breeder who you meet, nothing on the internet. If there's some things if some real tip-offs that you would say, gee, that's a puppy that's going to give you trouble as a grown dog. So we're going to be right back, and hold on for more with Shawn Stewart.
Support for Dog Talk comes from the Invisible Fence brand, the brand vets recommend most for dog safety and freedom. For over 35 years, Invisible Fence brand has kept pets safe at home by providing trusted technology, proven training, and total peace of mind. Information about your local Invisible Fence brand dealer can be found at invisiblefence.com or 1-800-818-DOGS, 1-800-818-DOGS. Support for Dog Talk comes from East End Veterinary Emergency and Specialty Center in Riverhead, providing emergency and critical care, as well as dermatology, orthopedic, and soft tissue surgery, advanced dentistry, and physical rehabilitation with hydrotherapy. Their doctors and technicians monitor your pet 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. East End Veterinary Emergency and Specialty Center. Information at 631-369-4513 or online at pet-er.com.
I'm back. You're listening to Dog Talk with Tracie Hotchner. No calls today because our phones aren't set up for it, but I'm talking to one of the official trainers of Dog Talk about the issues of how do you know what a dog's going to be like later, having heard about these amazing dogs that both Shawn has bred for police work and dogs that are in police work. Have you ever seen, Shawn, someone take a dog out of a shelter or out of rescue and put it to work successfully, or is that just too much of an unknown? You just don't know how many bad pieces of information are already in that dog's mental computer.
Well, it's done a lot, and New York State Police actually have a procurement program where they go into shelters and take donated dogs, and that's all their working dogs. That's where they're from.
Really?
And it
Wow.
it varies agency to agency as to what their policy is going to be. There are agencies that buy dogs with health guarantees, and there are agencies that will take a donation, and it's up to the specific agency to decide what direction they want to go in.
So if somebody has one of these dogs, you got the 74-year-old grandmother, and she got, for some crazy reason, a lab puppy, which obviously would have been the wrong dog to begin with. And the dog's pulling her down the sidewalk no matter how many times she works with Shawn Stewart, because the old lady, God bless her, she really can't handle this dog. And in addition, he's a dog that wants to fetch and play and run. How do people go about giving a dog to this police work? Does it have to be given to an agency and then to the police, or can they get in touch with the USPCA and contact you because you're the information person and say, who evaluates my dog in case it would be a good donation?
Yeah, and what we basically do is, as the organization, is put them in touch with whatever agency is looking at the time. But again, there's a lot of things to look at because a lot of people are giving dogs up. It's usually due to a bite situation. There's not many that are like